Good afternoon, hoops and hockey fans. Big Al here on this Monday, December 18th, 2023, and welcome to my weekly check of the NBA and NHL standings and a look at every game playing in the next week in both leagues. We're going to start, as always, with the NBA standings. Starting off with the Eastern Conference, where the Boston Celtics are still on top in the Atlantic Division with a record of 8-2 in their last 10 games, and they are 5 straight wins. The Philadelphia 76ers are in second place at 18-7, 2 games out, 8-2 in their last 10. They're hot as well, winning their last 6 games. The New York Knicks are in third place at 14-11. They are 6 games back, 5 in their last 10 games, including a loss in their most recent game. Brooklyn Nets are in fourth place at 13-12, 7 games back, 6-4 in their last 10, including 2 straight losses. And the Toronto Raptors round out the Atlantic Division at 10-15, 10 games out, 3-7 in their last 10, including a loss in their most recent game. On to the Central Division, led by the Milwaukee Bucks at 19-7, 8-2 in their last 10 games, including 4 straight wins. In a virtual tie for second place are the Indiana Pacers and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Both are 5 games behind Milwaukee in the Central. Indiana is 13-11. 5-5 in their last 10 games, including 3 straight losses. Cleveland is 14-12, 6-4 in their last 10, including a win in their last game. The Chicago Bulls are in fourth place, 10-7, 1.5 games out, 5-5 in their last 10, including a loss in their last game out. And the Detroit Pistons, their struggles continue. They are now an NBA worst 2-24, already 17 games out of first. No wins in their last 10 games because they're on a franchise record losing streak, which is now at 23 straight. The Orlando Magic still have the lead in the Southeast Division at 16-9, 6-4 in their last 10, including 2 straight losses. Second place are the Miami Heat, 15-11, 1.5 games out, 5-5 in their last 10, including a win in their last game. The Atlanta Hawks sit third at 10-15, 6 games out, 2-8 in their last 10, including a loss in their most recent game. Followed in fourth place by the Charlotte Hornets at 7-17, 8.5 games out, 2-8 in their last 10, including 4 straight losses. And the Washington Wizards rounding out the Southeast with a record of 4-21, 12 games out of first, 2-8 in the last 10, including a loss in their most recent game. Now to the Western Conference, the Dallas Mavericks still own the lead in the Southwest Division at 16-9, 6-4 in their last 10 games, including a win in their most recent. The New Orleans Pelicans have moved into second place at 16-11, 1 game back, 7-3 in their last 10, including 4 straight wins. The Houston Rockets fall to third place at 13-10. They are 2 games out, 6-4 in their last 10, including a loss in their most recent game. Fourth place are the Memphis Grizzlies at 6-18, 9.5 games out of first, 3-7 in their last 10, including 4 straight losses. And in last place still are the San Antonio Spurs at 4-21, 12 games out of first place, 1-9 in their last 10 games, and a loss in their most recent game. So this past week, the Spurs ended their franchise record losing streak at 18. The Minnesota Timberwolves have the best record in the NBA. They lead the Northwestern Division at 19-5, 8-2 in their last 10, including 2 straight wins. The Oklahoma City Thunder are in second place at 16-8, 3 games back. 6-4 in their last 10, including a win in their last game. The defending NBA champion Denver Nuggets are in third place, 17-10. 11, or rather 3.5 games out of first. Sorry about that. I was reading the wrong team. The Nuggets are 6-4 in their last 10, including a loss in their most recent game. The Utah Jazz are a distant fourth at 9-17. They're 11 games out of first place. 4-6 in their last 10, including a loss in their most recent game. And the Portland Trailblazers, turning ice cold recently, they are 6-19, 13.5 games out of first. 2-8 in their last 10, including 7 straight losses. Yes, that's right, 7 straight losses. Then you got the dogfight that is the Pacific Division, which is led by the Sacramento Kings, 15-9, 7-3 in their last 10, including 2 straight wins. Next are the red-hot Los Angeles Clippers in second place, 15-10. Just a half game out of the lead in the Pacific, 8-2 in their last 10, including 7 wins in a row. The Los Angeles Lakers are in third place at 15-11, just 1 game out. 6-4 in their last 10, including a loss in their most recent game. The Phoenix Suns are in fourth place at 14-12, 2 games out of first place. 4-6 in their last 10, including a win in their most recent game. And the Golden State Warriors round out this battle in the division at 12-14, 4 games out, 5-5 in their last 10, including 2 straight wins. Okay, jumping to the playoff races in the NBA. The top 6 in each conference make the playoffs. 7 through 10 all go to the play-in tournament. And we'll start with the Eastern Conference picture first. Boston's at the top of the conference at 20-5. Milwaukee sits second at 19-7. Then it's Philadelphia in third at 18-7. Orlando is the number 4 seed at the present time at 16-9. Then it's Miami at 15-11. They're in the 5 spot. And the 6th spot would go to the New York Knicks at 14-11. In the play-in tournament in the Eastern Conference, you've got Indiana at 13-11. They would sit at number 7 in the East. Cleveland is 14-12. They would be number 8. Then it's Brooklyn at 13-12 in the 9 spot. And Atlanta at 10-15 in that 10th and final spot. They have the same record as Toronto, also 10-15, but the Raptors would be out of the race as of right now. Chicago at 10-17 is 1 game out. Charlotte at 7-17, they are 2.5 games out. Washington at 4-21, a full 6 games out. And Detroit at 2-24 is 8.5 playoffs at this time through December 7th. All right. Meanwhile, the top 6 in the West would be Minnesota at 19-5. They're the number 1 seed. Oklahoma City at 16-8 would be the 2 seed. Dallas and Denver are in a virtual tie for 3rd. Dallas is 16-9, which gives them the tiebreaker. They're at number 3. Denver is 17-10. That pushes them down to the 4th spot. Number 5 is Sacramento at 15-9. And there's a virtual tie for that 6th and final playoff spot with the Clippers and Pelicans. LA is 15-10. And New Orleans is 16-11. That would put the Clippers in that 6th and final playoff spot. and bump New Orleans into the play-in tournament as they are number 7. The Los Angeles Lakers are in 8th with a record of 15-11. Number 9 is Houston at 13-10. And Phoenix has dropped to 10th in the conference at 14-12. On the outside of the playoffs, there's Golden State at 12-14. They are 2 games behind Phoenix for that last playoff spot. Utah at 9-17 would be 5 games out. Memphis at 6-18 would be 7 games out. Portland is 6-19, 7.5 games out. And Antonio at 4-21. They are 9.5 games behind the Suns for that number 10 spot. Okay, let's look at the games that will be taking place this week across the NBA, and we'll start with tonight's schedule here on December 18th. You have 3 games starting at 7 p.m. Eastern. The Houston Rockets at the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Los Angeles Clippers at the Indiana Pacers, and the Chicago Bulls at the Philadelphia 76ers. Those 3 games will start at 7 Eastern time. And then you'll have 3 more games at 7:30, including the Detroit Pistons at the Atlanta Hawks, the Minnesota Timberwolves at the Miami Heat, and the Charlotte Hornets at the Toronto Raptors. At 9 p.m. Eastern, it's the Memphis Grizzlies at the Oklahoma City Thunder. Then you'll have 2 games at 9 p.m. Eastern. The Dallas Mavericks visit the Denver Nuggets, and the Brooklyn Nets face off with the Utah Jazz. Then at 10 p.m. Eastern, it's the Washington Wizards on a West Coast trip. They'll face the Sacramento Kings. And the New York Knicks also continuing their West Coast swing. They're in LA tonight against LeBron and the Lakers at 10:30 Eastern time. So a pretty full slate of basketball on this Monday. Moving to tomorrow, which is Tuesday, December 19th, there are only 4 games on the schedule. The Memphis Grizzlies face the New Orleans Pelicans at 7:30 Eastern time. At 8, it's the San Antonio Spurs at the Milwaukee Bucks. And then you'll have 2 games at 10 p.m. The Boston Celtics at the Golden State Warriors, and the Phoenix Suns at the Portland Trailblazers. On Wednesday, December 20th, got a pretty big slate of games. 4 start at 7 p.m. Eastern, including the Utah Jazz at the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Charlotte Hornets at the Indiana Pacers, the Miami Heat at the Orlando Magic, and the Minnesota Timberwolves at the Philadelphia 76ers. All 4 of those games will begin at 7 p.m. Eastern. Then at 7:30, you have 2 games. The New York Knicks in against the Brooklyn Nets. Denver Nuggets north of the border against the Toronto Raptors. Sorry. At 8 p.m. Eastern, you have 2 more games. The Los Angeles Lakers at the Chicago Bulls and the Atlanta Hawks at the Houston Rockets. At 7:30, you got the LA Clippers in Dallas against Luka Doncic and the Mavericks. And at 10 o'clock Eastern, the Sacramento Kings will host the Boston Celtics. On Thursday, December 21st, the Utah Jazz travel to Detroit to face the Pistons. See if they can end that long losing streak. The New Orleans Pelicans visit the Cleveland Cavaliers. By the way, Jazz Pistons begin at 7, and the Pelicans and Cavs are at 7:30. They'll have 4 games at 8 p.m. Eastern, including the San Antonio Spurs at the Chicago Bulls, the Orlando Magic at the Milwaukee Bucks, the Los Angeles Clippers at the Oklahoma City Thunder, and the Indiana Pacers visiting the Memphis Grizzlies. At 9 p.m., the LA Lakers are in Minnesota against the Timberwolves. And at 10 p.m., it's the Washington Wizards at the Portland Trail Blazers. On Friday, December 22nd, you'll have 6 games on the schedule. The Toronto Raptors and the Philadelphia 76ers begin the night at 7 p.m. Eastern. A half hour later at 7:30, it's the Denver Nuggets and the Brooklyn Nets. Then you'll have 2 games at 8, including the Dallas Mavericks at the Houston Rockets and the Atlanta Hawks Miami Heat. And then you'll have 2 more games to wrap up the night at 10 p.m. Eastern. The Washington Wizards in against the Golden State Warriors and the Phoenix Suns at the Sacramento Kings. Moving along to Saturday, December 23rd, we got some day games on the schedule. The Milwaukee Bucks face the New York Knicks at MSG at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Then at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, the LA Clippers will host the Boston Celtics. The rest of the games are at night. You have 3 kicking off at 7 p.m., including the Houston Rockets at the New Orleans Pelicans, the Orlando Magic at the Indiana Pacers, and the Denver Nuggets at the Charlotte Hornets. Followed by 3 games at 7:30 Eastern Time. The Memphis Grizzlies in Atlanta against the Hawks. Then you've got the Detroit Pistons facing off with the Brooklyn Nets and the Utah Jazz at the Toronto Raptors. 2 more games will then begin at 8 p.m. Eastern, including the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Chicago Bulls, and the Los Angeles Lakers at the Oklahoma City Thunder. 2 more games will follow those at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. The San Antonio Spurs are in Dallas against the Mavericks, and the Portland Trail Blazers travel to San Francisco to face the Golden State Warriors. Final game of the night is at 10 p.m. Eastern. It's the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Sacramento Kings in a battle of division leaders. And then rounding out the week on Christmas Eve, there are no games scheduled. So that is it for the NBA standings and the upcoming schedule for the week. Now let's turn our attention to the National Hockey League and the current standings there. Starting in the Eastern Conference, the Boston Bruins are in first place in the Atlantic Division. 29 games played and a record of 19-5-5 for 43 points, with 17 wins in regulation or overtime. Then you have a points tie with both the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers. Toronto played 28 games. They are 16-6-6 with 12 wins in regulation or overtime. Florida, meanwhile, played 30 games. They are 18-10-2 with 18 wins in regulation or overtime. Both teams sit with 38 points. The Detroit Red Wings are in fourth place. 30 games played, 15-11-4 for 34 points, and all 15 wins coming in regulation or overtime. The Tampa Bay Lightning are in fifth place. 32 games played, 14-13-5, 33 points, all 14 wins in regulation or overtime. The Montreal Canadiens remain in sixth place. 30 games played, 13-13-4, 30 points, 10 wins in regulation or overtime. In seventh are the Buffalo Sabres. 32 games played, 13-16-3 for 29 points, all 13 wins in regulation or overtime. And rounding out the Atlantic are the Senators. 26 games played, 11-15 record for 22 points, and 10 wins in regulation or overtime. Moving over to the Metropolitan Division, led by the New York Rangers. 29 games played and a record of 21-7-1 for 43 points and 20 wins in regulation or overtime. The Philadelphia The Philadelphia Flyers are in second place, 30 games played, and a record of 17-10-3 for 37 points, with 14 wins in regulation or overtime. The New York Islanders are in third place, 30 games played, 14-8-8 for 36 points, 13 wins in regulation or overtime. The Carolina Hurricanes are in fourth place, 31 games played, 16-12-3, 35 points, 15 wins in regulation or overtime. Followed by the fifth place Washington Capitals. I almost said Senators, thinking about baseball there for a sec, but they're the Washington Capitals. 28 games played, 15-9-4 for 34 points and 12 wins in regulation or overtime. The New Jersey Devils are in sixth place. 29 games played, 16-12-1, 33 points, 16 wins in regulation or overtime. The Pittsburgh Penguins are seventh place. 29 games played and a record of 13-3 for 29 points, with 12 wins in regulation or overtime. And rounding out the Metro Division are the Columbus Blue Jackets. 32 games played, 10-17-5, 25 points, all 10 wins for Columbus in regulation or overtime. Now to the Western Conference. The Colorado Avalanche remain on top of the Central Division. 31 games played and a record of 19-10-2 for 40 points, with 18 wins in regulation or overtime. Next, you have a points tiebreaker with both the Winnipeg Jets and the Dallas Stars. Winnipeg is 9-2 with 18 wins in regulation or overtime. 8-4 with 15 wins in regulation or overtime. Both teams play 29 games and both teams have 38 points. The Nashville Predators are in fourth place. 31 games played and a record of 18-13 for 36 points, 17 wins in regulation or overtime. The Arizona Coyotes are in fifth place. 30 games played, 15-13-2, 32 points, 13 wins in regulation or overtime. The St. Louis Blues are in sixth place. 30 games played, 15-14-1 for 31 points, and 14 wins in regulation or overtime. In seventh place are the Minnesota Wild. 28 games played, 12-12-4 for 28 points, 9 wins in regulation or overtime. And sitting at the bottom of the Central are the Chicago Blackhawks. 30 games played and a record of 9-20-1 for 19 points, 9 wins in regulation or overtime. And based on points, that's the fewest of any team in the NHL through December 17th. Now to the Pacific Division, led by the Vegas Golden Knights, who have the best record in the NHL through December 17th. 32 games played and a record of 21-6-5 for 47 points, with 17 wins in regulation or overtime. The Vancouver Canucks stay in second place, 32 games played and a record of 21-9-2 for 44 points. And all 21 wins by the Canucks were in regulation or overtime. The Los Angeles Kings are in third place. 27 games played, 17-6-4 for 38 points, and 16 wins in regulation or overtime, and the division will drop off from there. The Calgary Flames are in fourth place, 31 games played, 12-14-5, 29 points, all 12 wins in regulation or overtime. Followed by the Seattle Kraken in fifth place, 32 games played, 10-14-8 for 28 points, 9 wins in regulation or overtime. Sitting in the number 6 spot in the Pacific are the Edmonton Oilers. 28 games played, 13-14-1 for 27 points, 12 wins in regulation or overtime. In 7th place are the free-falling Anaheim Ducks. 30 games played, record of 11-19 for 22 points, 10 wins in regulation or overtime. And back in last place are the San Jose Sharks. 31 games played, 9-19-3 for 21 points, all 9 wins by the Sharks in regulation or overtime. Now looking at the playoffs through December 17th, top 3 teams in the Atlantic Division would be Boston, Toronto, and Florida. Boston has 43 points. Toronto and Florida both have 38 points. The Maple Leafs have 2 games in hand on the Panthers. Top 3 in the Metropolitan Division are the New York Rangers, Philadelphia Flyers, and New York Islanders. Rangers have 43 points, Philly has 37, and the Islanders have 36. The top 3 in the Central would be Colorado, Winnipeg, and Dallas. Colorado has 40 points. Winnipeg and Dallas each have 38. The Jets have 1 more regulation win than the Stars and 3 more wins in regulation or overtime than the Stars. So that puts Winnipeg second and Dallas third. And in the Pacific, the top 3 would be Vegas at 47 points, top record in the NHL. Vancouver with 44 points, and the LA Kings with 38. The wild card spots in the Eastern Conference would go to the Carolina Hurricanes and the Washington Capitals. Carolina has 38 points. Washington has 34. Detroit also has 34, but they played 2 more games than the Capitals, so that pushes them out of the playoffs for the time being. New Jersey and Tampa Bay would be 1 point out, each with 33. Montreal is 4 points out, 30 points. Pittsburgh and Buffalo would both be 5 points out. They each have 29 points. Columbus is 9 points out, sitting with 25. And Ottawa would be 12 points out, sitting at the bottom of the East with 22 points. And then the wild card spots in the Western Conference would go to the Nashville Predators and the Arizona Coyotes. Nashville has 36 points, while Arizona has 32. The St. Louis Blues with 31 points would just be 1 point out of the playoffs. Calgary with 29 is 3 points back. Minnesota and Seattle both with 28 points, with 4 points out. Edmonton is 5 points out with 27. Then it's Anaheim, 10 points behind Arizona for that last playoff spot with 22 points. San Jose is 11 points out with 21. And Chicago already 13 points out with an NHL low 19 points. So that's the NHL standings. How about all the action from the coming week in the National Hockey League? Let's take a look at the schedule, and we'll start with tonight. I got to rewind this back because it's up on Christmas Eve. All right. So we're going back to today, which is December 18th. And we've got 2 games starting at 7 p.m. Eastern. The Anaheim Ducks at the Detroit Red Wings. The Minnesota Wild at the Pittsburgh Penguins. Those two games will face off at 7 Eastern Time. The Montreal Canadiens will play the Winnipeg Jets at 7:30 Eastern Time. Then at 8 Eastern, it's the Seattle Kraken at the Dallas Stars. Final game of the night is in Calgary at 7:30 Pacific, or 7:30 Mountain Time, 9:30 Eastern Time. The Calgary Flames will host the Florida Panthers. Moving to tomorrow, December 19th, you'll have a bunch of games on at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Among them, the Minnesota Wild at the Boston Bruins, the Columbus Blue Jackets at the Buffalo Sabres, the Vegas Golden Knights at the Carolina Hurricanes, the Philadelphia Flyers in against the New Jersey Devils, the St. Louis Blues in against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the New York Rangers at the Toronto Maple Leafs in an original 6 matchup. All 6 of those games will start at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. At 7:30, the New York Islanders will host the Edmonton Oilers. At 8 p.m. Eastern Time, it's the Vancouver Canucks at the Nashville Predators. The Colorado Avalanche will face off with the Chicago Blackhawks at 8:30. At 9 p.m. Eastern, it's the Ottawa Senators at the Arizona Coyotes. And the final game of the night is an all-California battle at 10:30 as the LA Kings visit the San Jose Sharks. On Wednesday, December 20th, only 3 games on the schedule. The New York Islanders are in D.C. against the Washington Capitals. That game is at 7:30 Eastern Time, as is the Detroit Red Wings at the Winnipeg Jets. That game is also at 7:30. Then at 10 p.m., it's the Seattle Kraken at the LA Kings. Moving along to Thursday, December 21st. 6 more games at 7 p.m. Eastern. The Toronto Maple Leafs at the Buffalo Sabres, the Nashville Predators at the Philadelphia Flyers, the Carolina Hurricanes and the Pittsburgh Penguins, Vegas Golden Knights and the Tampa Bay Lightning, the St. Louis Blues and the Florida Panthers, and Washington Capitals at the Columbus Blue Jackets. All of those games, 6 and 2, begin at 7 p.m. Eastern. At 7:30, the New Jersey Devils will host the Edmonton Oilers. Then you'll have 2 games at 8 p.m. Eastern. The Vancouver Canucks at the Dallas Stars and the Montreal Canadiens at the Minnesota Wild. At 9 p.m. Eastern, the Ottawa Senators are in Denver to face the Colorado Avalanche. And then you'll have 2 more games on the West Coast. At 10 p.m., the Calgary Flames will face the Anaheim Ducks. And the Arizona Coyotes face off with the San Jose Sharks at 10:30 Eastern Time on Thursday. On Friday, December 22nd, only a 4-game schedule. The Philadelphia Flyers and the Detroit Red Wings will play at 7 p.m. Eastern. The Edmonton Oilers at the New York Rangers is at 7:30. The Boston Bruins and Winnipeg Jets will face off at 8 p.m. Eastern. And at 8:30, it's the Montreal Canadiens at the Chicago Blackhawks in another original 6 matchup. All right, you have 2 day games on Saturday, December 23rd. You got the Vegas Golden Knights at the Florida Panthers and the Dallas Stars at the Nashville Predators. Those games will begin at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, and the rest are at night. You have 5 games starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, including the Detroit Red Wings at the New Jersey Devils, the Pittsburgh Penguins at the Ottawa Senators, the Tampa Bay Lightning at the Washington Capitals, the Toronto Maple Leafs at the Columbus Blue Jackets, and the Boston Bruins at the Minnesota Wild. Those 5 games will start at 7 p.m. Then you'll have 2 more at 7:30, including the New York Islanders at the Hurricanes and the Buffalo Sabres at the New York Rangers. And then after that, 2 more games at 8 p.m. The Chicago Blackhawks at the St. Louis Blues and the Seattle Kraken at the Anaheim Ducks. At 9 p.m. Eastern Time, it's the Arizona Coyotes at the Colorado Avalanche. Then at 10 p.m. Eastern, it's the Calgary Flames visiting Los Angeles Kings. Final game of the night is also at 10 p.m. Eastern. That's the San Jose Sharks at the Vancouver Canucks. And then the NHL will go on a 3-day Christmas break. So there will be no games on Christmas Eve, which is this coming Sunday. No games on Christmas Day, which is next Monday. And no games on the 26th either. So that means the NHL will resume play on Wednesday, December 27th. And that is a look at your NHL and NBA standings through December 17th and every game playing in both leagues this week. I will be back in approximately an hour and a half to kick off the Week 15 version of the week that was. Where we'll look at Thursday Night Football with the Chargers and Raiders and the Saturday triple header from over the weekend. Then in part 2, we'll look at the early afternoon games from Sunday. And in part 3, we'll have the rundowns for the late games from Sunday, plus Sunday Night Football between the Ravens and Jaguars, and Monday Night Football with the Eagles and Seahawks, plus my Week 16 power rankings and the updated playoff races in the National Football League as we go into week number 16. But part 1 of the week that was for Week 15 is coming up later today, so join me for that. In the meantime, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, ring the bell, and get notified every time. Big Al signing off. Thanks for watching and enjoy the hoops and hockey this week. And Merry Christmas to all.